Two men, two continents, different lives but the same dangerous path. Scottbeierle and Tobias Rathjen never crossed paths, yet both left behind a digital trail of isolation, bitterness and rage. Through videos, manifestos and online posts, they built identities shaped on misogyny, conspiracy theories and the language of incel cultures. Their stories reveal how grievance can fester online and how easily it can spill into the real world. On November 2nd, 2018, a man walked into a yoga studio in Tallahassee, Florida. He carried a gun and years of growing resentment. Within minutes, the peaceful class turned into chaos. 2 women were dead, 4 more were wounded, and a community was left reeling. But this story didn't start in that yoga studio. It began with a pattern of bitterness that would follow Scottbeierle into adulthood. Even in his younger years, friends described him as withdrawn and frustrated by rejection. That anger hardened over time, shaping how he saw the women around him. By 2012, it was seeping into real actions. Beierle was arrested for groping 2 women at Florida State University. In 2016, it happened again when he groped a woman at the pool in his apartment complex. Both cases ended with dropped charges under deferred prosecution, but it was a sign of a deepening problem. Those incidents showed a man whose anger was starting to spill over. And then online, that anger began to transform into something much darker. In 2014, under the alias Scott Carnifex, Beierle began uploading unhinged YouTube rants and misogynistic SoundCloud tracks. One of those tracks, The Rebirth of My Misogynism, name-checked a woman from his past with the chilling line, "I could have ripped her head off." In a YouTube video, he spoke directly to young men like himself. To those in the disposition of Elliotrodger. That was me as an adolescent. For those unfamiliar, Elliotrodger was the man behind the 2014 Isla Vista killings in California, a 22-year-old who murdered 6 people and left behind a manifesto dripping with misogyny. Online incel forums turned him into a twisted hero, calling him the Supreme Gentleman. Beierle not only admired Rodger, but also modelled his own worldview and sense of grievance after Rodger's story. His content mirrored the themes common in online incel spaces: sexual frustration, bitterness, and the belief that women held all the power. In one video, Dangers of Diversity, he ranted against multiculturalism and immigration, even labelling women who dated black men as whores. In another rant, he spoke of a virginity burden faced by young men, the idea that after a certain age it was shameful to still be a virgin and that men were punished for sexual inexperience while women were rewarded with control and choice. After years of posting this content, by 2018 his anger shifted from online resentment to deadly intent. On July 23rd, 2018, he legally purchased a Glock pistol from a pawn shop, and he held on to the gun for months while he searched online for a target. Eventually, he settled on Hot Yoga Tallahassee, a small enclosed studio known for its mostly female clientele. Beierle called the studio twice, checked class schedules and mapped out his approach. He would attack a few months later. On November 2nd, he put his plan into motion. Visiting the studio, Beierle signed in under his real name before briefly stepping outside. When he returned, he was carrying a rolled-up yoga mat. Following studio policy, the instructor asked him to store it in a nearby cupboard to keep the practice space clear. Beierle paused, looked at her, and said, "But I have a question." He slipped on hearing protection and let the mat fall. Inside was his Glock. Before anyone could react, he opened fire, and with only one exit to the building, escape was almost impossible. In under 4 minutes, 6 women were shot. 2 of them, 21-year-old Maura Binkley and 61-year-old Dr. Nancy Van Vessem, were killed. When Beierle's gun jammed, one of the students seized the moment. He struck him with a vacuum and a broom, forcing Beierle to stumble back before he turned the weapon on himself. Moments later, the room fell silent, except for the sound of survivors scrambling for safety as the attack came to an abrupt end. Beierle had fired 14 rounds in total. When police arrived, he was already dead. Investigators followed the digital trail and uncovered a chilling line from one of his final songs. "If I can't find one decent female to live with, I will find many indecent females to die with." The US Secret Service later classified the shooting as misogynistic extremism. Their case study highlighted the same signs visible online for years: violent content, harassment, isolation, and an escalating fixation on women. Beierle's story is a stark warning of what happens when online hate festers unchecked and turns into violence. But Beierle wasn't the only one consumed by resentment online. Across the ocean, another man was building his own ideology, leaving behind a manifesto before committing one of Germany's most deadly attacks. To him, the world wasn't just watching, it was listening, reading his mind. And online, that fear mutated into something worse: a manifesto, a movement, and a massacre. In February 2020, the quiet German city of Hanau would become the stage for one of the country's deadliest far-right attacks in modern history. 9 people lost their lives, but behind the gunfire was a disturbing online presence: a manifesto, videos, and an ideology steeped in conspiracy theories, misogyny, and the language of incel culture. A month before the shooting, Tobias Rathjen began building his worldview online. On his personal website, he posted a video sharing what he called a message to the entire German people, a declaration demanding the genocide of Algeria, Turkey, and Israel, and the ethnic cleansing of Germany. He claimed he had been watched since birth because authorities knew he was the chosen one to deliver this message. Alongside the video came a 24-page manifesto, a blueprint for annihilation. It called for a basic cleansing, followed by a fine cleanup, even fantasizing about wiping out half the world's population. Entire nations were marked for destruction. Inside Germany, anyone he deemed impure was to be erased. Threaded through it all were the same delusions: shadowy surveillance, intelligence agencies using mind readers to control his thoughts. He claimed Hollywood films and TV shows were stolen from his ideas, proof he believed of his unique importance. And beneath the grand plans was something painfully personal. He blamed this imagined surveillance for his loneliness, insisting it was why he had never had a wife or girlfriend. Although he never actually referred to himself as an incel, his views aligned with the culture: an involuntary celibate with far-right leanings and what experts called a significant mental health issue. His words carried the same grievance and isolation seen in online incel spaces: sexual frustration knotted together with paranoia and anger. Just days before the attack, Rathjen recorded a video in English addressed to all Americans. His voice carried the weight of his delusions as he delivered the message: your country is under control of invisible secret societies. He claimed children were tortured in satanic rituals at secret underground military bases, and urged viewers to distrust mainstream media. Rathjen wasn't aiming to make a local statement. He wanted his paranoia broadcast to the world. And then on February 19th, 2020, the words became action. Rathjen stepped into a shisha bar in Hanau and opened fire without warning. Within minutes, people were dead or wounded, many of them young, many of them with immigrant backgrounds. Survivors recalled locked exits, panic, and the sound of gunfire cutting through the night. He then drove to a second bar just a few miles away and continued the massacre, tracking victims through parked cars and into the building. By the time he left, 9 people in total had been killed. Rathjen fled the scene, returning to his home, where he turned the gun on his own 72-year-old mother before killing himself. When police arrived hours later, the house was silent, the final act of a man consumed by his own paranoia. Rathjen's story, like Beierle's, is a warning, a sign of how isolation and rage can take root online and end in real-world tragedy. Two men, two continents, different lives, but the same dangerous path. Beierle and Rathjen are proof of how resentment and paranoia can grow unchecked online, and how easily those thoughts can move from a screen to real-world violence. Thank you for watching today's video, and if you want to explore more cases like this, maybe consider subscribing. I cover a new true crime story every week. Until then.